A $500 million deal is collapsing in a New York high-rise. A billionaire is watching his empire crack. An expert translator is sweating, lying, and destroying everything. The clients, stoic, powerful, and Swedish, are standing up to leave, disgusted by an insult they can't ignore. The room is silent, save for the sound of a deal dying, and in the corner, holding a silver tray, is a waitress. She's invisible. She's a nobody. But she's the only person in the room who knows the truth. In the next 10 seconds, she can either keep pouring water or she can step out of the shadows and change her entire life. The scent of seared scallops and truffle oil was the smell of Lucas Vance's prison. It was 7:11 p.m. at Aurelia, a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a sign, only a discreetly lit number 2112 on a black marble facade in Midtown Manhattan. Inside, the world was hushed. Conversations were murmurs, silverware was heavy sterling, and the clientele looked like they owned the very air they breathed. Lucas, 24, was a ghost in this world. Her black and white uniform was impeccably starched, a courtesy of the restaurant's oppressive laundry service, but her black non-slip shoes, hidden by the long tablecloths, were cracked at the sole. She moved with an economy of motion that was both graceful and weary. Every shift, she balanced two things: a tray heavy with crystal glasses and the crushing weight of $120,000 in medical debt. Table 7 needs bread. Table 4, water. And Vance, hissed Mr. Dubois, the restaurant manager. He was a man who looked like a starved penguin, all beak and tuxedo. The Thorne party is arriving at 7:30. They have the private atrium. Do not, and I mean do not, make a single mistake. He's particular. Yes, Mr. Dubois, Lucas said, her voice a practiced, polite monotone. Particular was an understatement. Marcus Thorne was a titan, a predator. His firm, Thorne Capital, didn't invest in companies. It devoured them. Lucas had seen him in the restaurant before. He never looked at the staff. He didn't see them. They were fixtures, like the chandeliers. Lucas's life hadn't always been this. 3 years ago, she was E. Vance, the prodigy of Columbia University's dual degree program, linguistics and computer science. She spoke 4 languages, including the Swedish her mother, Anya, had taught her. It was their secret language, a language of bedtime stories and warm kitchens. Then the diagnosis: ovarian cancer, fast, brutal, and expensive. Lucas dropped out, trading her senior thesis on cryptographic protocols for a sommelier's corkscrew and a waitress's apron to manage the endless, crushing bills. Her mother had died 6 months ago, leaving Lucas with the debt, the grief, and a fluency in a language that was useless for paying rent in New York. She finished her rounds, the polite smile fixed on her face. Her co-worker, Maria, gave her a sympathetic look as she passed the bar. Dubois on the warpath tonight? Maria muttered. Thorne is coming, Lucas whispered back. Ah, God help us all. At 7:28 p.m., the restaurant's hushed atmosphere fractured. It wasn't a sound, it was a pressure change. Marcus Thorne entered. He was tall, dressed in a $20,000 Tom Ford suit that looked casual, and he moved with the aggressive energy of a man who believed the planet tilted for him. With him were 2 others, a woman with a tablet and eyes that missed nothing. Lucas recognized her as Sarah Jenkins, Thorne's COO, and a man younger, handsome, and preening in a blue suit. He looked around Aurelia not with appreciation, but with the air of someone assessing its value. Mr. Thorne, a pleasure, Dubois breathed, bowing so low he was almost comical. Atrium. Now, Thorne grunted, already moving. And Mr. Croft, Dubois said, nodding to the younger man. Julian Croft, the man said, his voice loud. He adjusted his silk tie. Chief Language Strategist for Thorne Capital. Lucas, stalking the service station nearby, almost rolled her eyes. Chief Language Strategist? The Swedes are already here, sir, Dubois added, ushering them toward the glass-enclosed atrium that overlooked the city. Lucas caught a glimpse of the guests as the door opened. 2 men, one older, with a formidable, trimmed white beard and startlingly clear blue eyes. He wore a simple, impeccably cut gray suit. The younger man beside him, likely his son, had the same eyes but a more modern, tense energy. They looked serious, severe, and deeply unimpressed. That's them, Sarah Jenkins murmured to Thorne. Gustav and Oscar Lindstrom, Innovatect. The $500 million patent, Thorne replied, his voice a low growl. Let's go get it. Dubois pointed at Lucas. Vance, you have the atrium. Water, wine, bread, and stay invisible. Lucas nodded, picking up her heavy silver tray. Invisible. That was the one thing she was good at. She took a deep breath, centered herself, and pushed open the heavy glass door. The private atrium was soundproofed. The moment the door shut, the restaurant's murmur vanished, replaced by a thick, vibrating silence. Lucas could feel the tension like static on her skin. Marcus Thorne sat at the head of the table, radiating impatience. Mr. Lindstrom, glad you could make it. Gustav Lindstrom, the patriarch, nodded slowly. His gaze was steady and analytical. His son, Oscar, offered a tight-lipped smile. Mr. Thorne, Gustav said. His English was perfect, but carried the melodic, formal cadence of a native Swede. Thank you for hosting us at Aurelia. It is impressive. We'll skip the pleasantries, Thorne said, waving a hand. My team is ready. The offer's on the table. It's aggressive, it's fair, and I'm ready to sign tonight. Julian? Julian Croft, the language strategist, sat up straighter. He beamed at the Swedes. God kväll, mina herrar. Det är en ära att vara här. Good evening, gentlemen. It is an honor to be here. Lucas, pouring chilled water into the crystal goblets, froze for a microsecond. Her hand didn't waver, but her blood ran cold. It wasn't just what he said. It was how. His accent was atrocious. It was the loud, over-enunciated Swedish of a tourist who had memorized a phrase book. It was clumsy, almost insulting in its lack of finesse. Gustav Lindstrom's eyebrow twitched. It was the smallest possible movement, but to Lucas, who had grown up with that language, it was a siren. Oscar, the son, replied in Swedish. Tack, vi uppskattar er enthusiasm. Thank you. We appreciate your enthusiasm. Lucas caught the hesitation. The word enthusiasm was used with a faint, dry irony. Julian, clearly missing the nuance, turned to Thorne and translated. He says they're very excited and ready to go. Thorne grinned. Excellent. Then let's talk numbers. Lucas moved silently around the table. Her sole job was to be invisible, to keep the glasses full. But she was trapped. She was the only person in the room, besides the Lindstroms, who understood what was actually being said, and it was already going wrong. Thorne launched into his pitch. We see Innovatect as a legacy asset. We want to acquire the Heimdall green energy patent, integrate its R&D into Thorne Capital, and push it to the global market inside 6 months. We're offering $500 million cash. He paused. Julian. Julian nodded, taking a breath. He began to speak to the Lindstroms in Swedish, and Lucas wanted to die. It was a car crash in slow motion. Julian wasn't just translating, he was butchering. He used the wrong tense verbs, he mixed up formal and informal pronouns, and most terrifyingly, he didn't know the technical or business vocabulary. He translated Thorne's legacy asset as gammal tillgång, which literally meant old possession or used thing. It was the kind of phrase you'd use for a second-hand car. Gustav Lindstrom's back stiffened. Julian, blissfully unaware, plowed on. He translated integrate its R&D as ta over er forskning, which meant take over your research. It was a translation of brute force, of conquest, not partnership. And, Julian concluded, Mr. Thorne offers $500 million. He stated the number, then added in his own flourish, Det är ett mycket generöst erbjudande. Ni borde acceptera. It is a very generous offer. You should accept. Lucas had to physically grip her silver tray to stop her hands from shaking. He hadn't just translated. He had given them a command. The room dropped 20 degrees. Oscar Lindstrom put his water glass down, the clink against the wood table sounding like a gunshot. Gustav Lindstrom looked at Julian, then at Thorne. His voice, when he replied in Swedish, was pure ice. Herr Croft, Gustav began, please tell Mr. Thorne that Innovatect is the life's work of 3 generations. It is not a gammal tillgång to be taken over. It is the ARV, the heritage of my family. He was speaking slowly, Deliberately, his words like chisels. Tell him his offer is not just a number. It is a reflection of his understanding. And from what I have just heard, he understands nothing. Lucas's heart was hammering against her ribs. Arv, heritage, soul. All eyes turned to Julian. He was sweating now. The confident smirk was gone. He had clearly understood some of the words. Offer, nothing. But he had missed the core, the why. He had missed the word RV. He turned to Marcus Thorne, and he lied. What did he say, Julian? Thorne's voice was low, impatient. Julian Croft cleared his throat. The silence in the atrium was absolute. Lucas stood by the service station, frozen, a phantom witness. He's playing hard to get, Mr. Thorne, Julian stammered. He says the valuation is wrong. He's unhappy with the numbers. Thorne's eyes narrowed. Unhappy? I'm offering 20% over their last valuation. What is this? A shakedown? Tell him. No, wait, sir, Julian said, raising a hand, trying to look like he was in control. He said it's an insult. An insult? Thorne barked, a flush rising on his neck. $500 million is an insult. Lucas was shaking her head, a tiny, involuntary movement. No, he's making it worse. He's turning a cultural misunderstanding into a bar fight. Thorne leaned forward, his voice a growl. Julian, translate. Exactly. He pointed at Lindstrom. Tell him that I don't fly to New York to be insulted. Tell him this offer is final. He takes it or I walk, and he'll never get another one like it. Julian, trapped, turned back to the Swedes. His face was pale. He had to say something. He opened his mouth and a torrent of catastrophic Swedish fell out. He tried to convey Thorne's threat, but he lacked the vocabulary. He ended up saying something that amounted to, Mr. Thorne är arg. Han säger att ni är dumma om ni inte tar pengarna. Det här är ert sista val. Mr. Thorne is angry. He says you are stupid if you don't take the money. This is your last choice. Stupid. He had used the word duma. Lucas felt the blood drain from her face. Oscar Lindstrom shot to his feet. His chair scraping back was a sound of pure violence. Nog! Enough! Gustav Lindstrom, the father, raised a hand, and Oscar subsided, though his fists were clenched. The patriarch's face was a mask of cold, profound fury. He stood up slowly, with a terrible, icy dignity. He looked past Julian, past Thorne, and for the first time his eyes met Lucas's. He saw her. He saw the horror on her face. It was a fleeting, fractional glance, but it was a connection. Then Gustav Lindstrom turned to Marcus Thorne. He spoke in slow, perfect, cutting English. Mr. Thorne, it is clear you have surrounded yourself with incompetence. This translator of yours is a fool. He has butchered our language, misrepresented your intentions, and just now, he called us stupid. Thorne's head snapped toward Julian. You what? Julian looked like he was about to be sick. Sir, I didn't. It was a misinterpretation. This meeting is over, Gustav said, buttoning his jacket. You do not take over Innovatect. You do not dismiss our heritage. And you do not call us stupid. We will find a partner who values respect. Respect, the word hung in the air. This is a disaster, Sarah Jenkins, the COO, whispered, staring at her tablet as if it held a doomsday clock. Thorne was apoplectic. He was on his feet now, his face crimson. You're walking away from $500 million because of a word? You are walking away from it, Gustav corrected him, because you sent a child to do a man's job. This is a skimuff, a disgrace. Wait, Thorne snarled. He was losing. He hated losing. Julian, what did he just say? What's a skimuff? Julian was mute. He was trembling. He was professionally, financially, and personally finished. He called you a disgrace, a quiet voice said. The voice was clear, steady, and female. It didn't come from the table. It came from the corner. Every head in the room, Thorne, Jenkins, Julian, Oscar, and Gustav, snapped to Lucas Vance. She was standing by the wine station, her silver tray held at her side. Her face was pale, but her eyes were burning. She had spoken. She had broken the first and only rule of her job. She was no longer invisible. The silence that followed Lucas's words was heavier and more absolute than any that had come before. It was the silence of a grenade with the pin pulled. Mr. Dubois, who had been hovering just outside the glass door, saw the tableau and looked as if he might faint. Julian Croft's face, already pale, turned a sickly, waxy white. Marcus Thorne stared at Lucas. He didn't look at her like a person. He looked at her like a piece of furniture that had just started talking. "What?" he said, his voice terrifyingly soft. "Did you just say?" Lucas's heart was a trapped bird against her ribs. Her career, her job, her only meager paycheck, it was all evaporating. But the words of her mother, the memory of her language, and the sight of Gustav Lindstrom's dignified fury, it was a combination she couldn't ignore. She had already stepped off the cliff. She might as well fly. She stepped forward away from the wall. "I said, Mr. Thorne," she repeated, her voice clearer now, "that Mr. Lindstrom called you a disgrace, a scamp, and he didn't call you that because of the money." She turned her gaze to Gustav Lindstrom, and she spoke in Swedish, perfect, formal, respectful Swedish, the Swedish of her mother's lullabies, of summers in Stockholm, of her university studies. "Herr Lindström, ursäkta mig. Jag är bara en servitris, men det här är en fruktansvärd orättvisa." "Mr. Lindström, excuse me. I am only a waitress, but this is a terrible injustice." Gustav Lindström's stony expression flickered. It was surprise, deep, profound surprise. He replied in Swedish. "Du talar flytande. Vem är du, lilla flicka?" "You speak fluently. Who are you, little girl?" "My name is Lucas Vance," she answered, still in Swedish. "My mother was Anja VRS from Uppsala, and I am a person who hates to see a legacy insulted." She then turned to Marcus Thorne, switching back to English, her voice now ringing with an authority that shocked everyone, including herself. "Mr. Thorne, your translator didn't misinterpret. He lied. Mr. Lindstrom never complained about the money. He was offended because your translator called his company a used thing. He was offended because your translator said you were taking over his life's work. And he stood up to leave because your translator, Mr. Croft, just called him and his son stupid to their faces." Every word was a nail in Julian Croft's coffin. "That's a lie," Julian shrieked, finding his voice. "She's a waitress. What does she know? Sir, she's lying. She's trying to, I don't know, get attention." Thorne didn't even look at Julian. His eyes were locked on Lucas, then on Gustav. He was a shark and he smelled blood, but he wasn't sure whose. "Mr. Lindstrom," Thorne said, pointing at Lucas, "is what she's saying true?" Gustav Lindstrom adjusted his suit cuff. He looked at Lucas, a flicker of deep appreciation in his eyes. "Yes," Gustav said in English. "Every word that young woman just said is true. Your man, Han är en bedragare." He looked at Lucas. "Translate that." Lucas met Thorne's gaze. "He said Mr. Croft is an imposter." That was it, the snap. Marcus Thorne's face became chillingly calm. He pointed one steady finger at Julian Croft. "Get out." "Mr. Thorne, please, I can explain. I have a zero-tolerance policy for two things, Croft: incompetence and lying. You just manage both. Get out of my building, you're fired." "Sarah," he snapped at his COO, "call security, have him escorted out, and call legal. I want his contract clawed back, now." Julian, sputtering, turned to leave, but Sarah Jenkins was already on her phone, her voice cold and efficient. "Security to the atrium. We have a terminated employee." Julian was gone, a ghost of his own hubris. The atrium was quiet again, but the tension had changed. It was no longer hostile. It was electric with possibility. Marcus Thorne, the billionaire who had just lost his translator and was seconds from losing a $500 million deal, turned his full, terrifying attention to Lucas Vance. She was still standing there, in her black and white uniform, her silver tray clutched in one hand. He pointed to the chair that Julian had just vacated. "You're not a waitress anymore," Marcus Thorne commanded. "Sit down. Save this deal." Lucas's legs felt like water. She looked at the empty chair, a plush, leather high-backed chair, still warm from the imposter. She looked at Gustav and Oscar Lindstrom, who were watching her with cautious intrigue. She looked at Marcus Thorne, whose expression was unreadable, a mask of pure predatory calculation. "Mr. Thorne," Lucas said, her voice shaking, but her resolve hardening. "I can't. I'm on duty." A ghost of a smile, or perhaps a grimace, touched Thorne's lips. "You were on duty. Now you're on my payroll. Sit down, Ms. Vance." Lucas took a breath. She walked to the service station, placed her silver tray down with a quiet, final thud. She untied the starched white apron from around her waist, folded it neatly, and placed it on the tray. Then, smoothing her simple black skirt, she walked to the table and took the translator's seat. She was no longer at the edge of the room. She was at the center of the fire. "All right, Ms. Vance," Thorne said, sitting down. "You're in charge. What do I do?" It was a test. He was handing her the reins to see if she'd panic. Lucas didn't panic. She centered herself, channeling the composure she'd learned from her mother. She turned not to Thorne, but to Gustav Lindström. She spoke in Swedish, her tone not just fluent, but diplomatic. It was the language of boardrooms, not just kitchens. "Herr Lindström, Herr Thorne är inte en man som förstår nyanser. Han är en hammare. Han ser bara spikar. Men han respekterar styrka och han respekterar innovation. Det är därför han är här." "Mr. Lindström, Mr. Thorne is not a man who understands nuance. He is a hammer. He only sees nails. But he respects strength and he respects innovation. That is why he is here." Oscar the son let out a small, sharp laugh. He'd called the billionaire a hammer. Gustav's expression softened. "Och du? Vad är du? And you? What are you?" Lucas met his gaze. "Jag är skölden. Låt mig översätta hans kraft, inte hans ord. I am the shield. Let me translate his power, not just his words." Gustav Lindström nodded, a slow, deep gesture of approval. He sat back down. His son followed. The meeting was back on. Lucas turned to Thorne. "Mr. Lindström and his son are seated. You have their attention, but you need to apologize." "I don't apologize," Thorne stated. "Then you'll lose this deal," Lucas said flatly. "You didn't insult him, Mr. Thorne. Your employee did. But your employee represented you. You need to apologize for the insult, not for the offer." Thorne stared at her. He was being coached by a 24-year-old waitress. He hated it, but he also knew she was right. "Fine," he growled. He looked at Gustav. "Mr. Lindström, it seems my former employee was an idiot. I apologize for the insult. It was not my intention." Lucas translated this instantly, but she changed it. She used the Swedish word for profound regret, "djupt beklagen," instead of just apologize. She softened Thorne's bluntness, translating his intent rather than his abrasive words. Gustav nodded, accepting. "Now," Lucas said to Thorne, "address the real issue. It was never the money. It's the heritage. Tell him what you really think of his technology." Thorne leaned forward, his eyes alight. This he could do. "The Heimdall patent isn't a legacy asset in the sense that it's old," he said, his voice passionate. "It's a legacy in that it's a foundation. It's the future of green energy. What your father built," he said, looking at Oscar, "and what your father," he said to Gustav, "built, it's a masterpiece. I don't want to take it over. I want to launch it. I want to put the Innovatech name on every solar panel and battery from New York to New Delhi. I want to make it the global standard." Lucas's translation was a work of art. She captured Thorne's aggressive passion but stripped it of its predatory edge. She used words like partnerskap, partnership, gemensam vision, shared vision, and era arvet, honor the heritage. As she spoke, she saw the room transform. The frost thawed. Oscar leaned forward, listening intently. Gustav's stern facade relaxed. He began to ask questions. For the next hour, Lucas was a diplomat, a bridge of words. She was flawless. She not only translated complex financial terms, EBITDA, leveraged buyouts, but also complex engineering concepts. She moved between the two languages as if she were breathing. The deal, which had been dead, was now alive and breathing. They'd agreed on the price. They'd agreed on the branding. They'd agreed on the legacy. "It seems," Thorne said, a rare, genuine smile on his face, "we have a deal. Sarah, draw up the prelims." This is excellent, Sarah Jenkins said, her fingers flying on her tablet. But Gustav Lindstrom held up a hand. At Augenblick, one moment, he looked at his son Oscar. Oscar, who had been quiet for the last hour, now had a deep frown. It is not so simple, Oscar said in English. We have one final point, a non-negotiable. It is why we were hesitant from the beginning. Thorne's smile vanished. What? The Heimdall Protocol, Oscar said. The Heimdall Protocol. It's our new data security system. It's how our grid communicates. It's built on a proprietary blockchain kernel. Our European clients trust it because it is unbreachable. Okay, Thorne said. Good, we'll use it. You can't, Oscar said flatly. Your US-based infrastructure at Thorne Capital, it's incompatible. Our protocol cannot run on your servers. It would compromise our security. To integrate, as you say, you would have to break our protocol. We cannot allow that. It is the one thing my father and I are unified on. The deal is impossible. The room went cold again. Sarah Jenkins checked her notes, her face pale. Our engineers, they flagged this. They said it would take a 9-month R&D cycle to build a secure bridge API. We don't have 9 months. The market window closes in 3. Thorne slammed his fist on the table, not in anger, but in sheer frustration. So that's it? After all this, we're stopped by a server? It is not just a server, Mr. Thorne, Gustav said quietly. It is the heart of our company. We cannot sell you the body and keep the heart. We are sorry. They were standing up again. This time it was with regret, not anger. The deal was dead. For real. Lucas's mind was racing. Proprietary blockchain. Incompatible infrastructure. Secure bridge. The words were echoing. She knew those words. She had written those words. Wait, Lucas said, her voice quiet. Everyone stopped. Mr. Lindstrom, Oscar, she said, her voice trembling now, but with a different energy, with adrenaline. You're trying to build a bridge. You don't need a bridge. It's too slow and it's vulnerable. Oscar looked at her confused. What are you talking about? It's the only way. No, it's not, Lucas said, standing up. She was no longer a translator. She was a scholar. You can use a decentralized hash-based signature wrapper, a DHS container. Sarah Jenkins, the COO, looked up from her tablet. A what? You containerize the protocol, Lucas said, her words coming faster. You run it natively on Mr. Thorne's servers, but it remains cryptographically sealed. It's like a diplomatic pouch. His system can transport it, but it can never open it or read it. It's perfectly secure, it requires no bridge, and integration would take a week, not 9 months. The room was silent. Oscar Lindstrom was staring at her, his mouth slightly open. A DHS wrapper. That's theoretical. It's the Lamport-Vance signatory theory. Yes, Lucas said, nodding. It's an unpublished white paper from Columbia. A student paper, Oscar said, his eyes wide. We've been trying to build on that theory for a year. It's the most brilliant piece of cryptographic work I've ever seen. We tried to find the author, but they'd vanished. He took a step closer to her. He was connecting the dots. The paper, he whispered. It was by E. Vance. Lucas. Vance. You? The revelation landed in the atrium with the force of a physical blow. Marcus Thorne, who had been looking at his COO with frustration, now looked at Lucas as if she had just grown a second head. Sarah Jenkins' pen slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the table. Oscar Lindstrom was pale. You? Is it you? Yes, Lucas whispered. It was my senior thesis. I never finished. I had to drop out. Oscar walked around the table until he was standing directly in front of her. He wasn't looking at a waitress. He was looking at a visionary. Your paper, Ms. Vance, it's the reason we built the Heimdall Protocol. We based our entire security architecture on your theory, but we couldn't solve the final piece, the integration wrapper. We assumed E. Vance had been hired by the NSA or Google, gone dark. No, Lucas said, the ghost of her past life rising. My mother got sick. I came here, to Aurelia, to pay bills. Gustav Lindstrom, the patriarch, looked from Lucas to Thorne, and he did something no one in the room had ever seen him do. He began to laugh. It was not a small chuckle. It was a deep, booming, joyous laugh that echoed off the glass walls. "Mr. Thorne," he boomed, wiping a tear from his eye, "this is magnific. You fly us to New York. You wine us in this palace. You try to buy our company for $500 million. He walked over and clapped a stunned Marcus Thorne on the shoulder. "And all this time," Gustav roared, "you had the one person we have been trying to hire for a year, serving you water." Thorne was speechless. He was connecting the dots, his analytical brain firing on all cylinders. The linguistics, the comp sci, the obscure cryptographic theory. This wasn't a lucky break. This was impossible. "Your E. Vance," Sarah Jenkins said, finally finding her voice. "Your Lamport Vance paper it's legendary in a very, very small circle. We've been trying to solve that exact integration problem for our satellite network." "So," Thorne said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. He was no longer frustrated. He was calculating. "Let me get this straight. You," he pointed at Lucas, "can build this wrapper?" I think so." "Yes," Lucas said, her confidence returning. "It's my theory. I know how it works." "You can lead the integration?" Oscar asked, his voice filled with excitement. "You can do it?" "Yes," Lucas said. Oscar turned to his father. He spoke in rapid-fire Swedish. "Pappa, det här förändrar allt. Det är inte bara affären. Det är hon. Med henne kan vi kan låsa marknaden." "Dad, this changes everything. It's not just the deal. It's her. With her, we can lock the market." Gustav nodded, his smile fading into a look of shrewd business. He turned to Thorne. "Mr. Thorne, we have a new deal." Thorne crossed his arms. "I'm listening." "We accept your offer of $500 million, Gustav said, "on one new condition. Innovatech and Thorne Capital will form a new joint venture to manage the Heimdall Protocol. And Ms. Lucas Vance, she will be its chief architect. She will lead the integration. She will answer to us and you. This is non-negotiable." Thorne looked at Lucas. She was standing there, the weight of her old life and the sudden, terrifying brightness of her new one colliding. She was no longer a ghost. She was the most important person in the room. "Well, Ms. Vance," Thorne said, "you're a long way from pouring water. Can you do it?" Lucas looked at the two Swedes who were watching her with a respect she hadn't felt in years. She looked at Thorne, a man who represented everything she'd been locked out of. "Yes," she said. "Then we have a deal," Thorne said. He grabbed a heavy linen napkin from the table and pulled a gold pen from his jacket. "Sarah, write this down. A $500 million acquisition, a joint venture, and a new hire." They signed the napkin. Gustav Lindstrom, Oscar Lindstrom, and Marcus Thorne. Then Gustav slid the napkin and the pen over to Lucas. "Ditt namn också, Fröken Vance," he said. "Your name too, Miss Vance." Her hand was shaking, but not from fear, from power. She signed Lucas Vance right below the signature of the billionaire. The departure of the Lindstroms was entirely different from their arrival. Gustav gripped Lucas's hands in both of his. "Din mor skulle vara så stolt," he said in Swedish. "Your mother would be so proud." Tears welled in Lucas's eyes, the first she'd allowed herself to shed. "Thank you, Mr. Lindstrom. Tack." Oscar shook her hand, his eyes bright with a kind of hero worship. "I will have my head of engineering call you tomorrow." "No, tonight. We have so much to discuss." E. Vance. I still cannot believe it. When they left, the atrium was silent again, but the silence was heavy with consequence. It was just Lucas, Marcus Thorne, and his COO, Sarah Jenkins. Mr. Dubois, the manager, was hovering outside the glass, wringing his hands, terrified to enter. Sarah Jenkins was the first to speak. "Ms. Vance, I've just Googled your academic record. Linguistics and Comp Sci, Columbia. Highest honors, until you dropped out, spring semester, 3 years ago. The medical withdrawal." "My mother," Lucas said quietly. "I see," Sarah said, her voice softer. "Well, welcome to the team. I'll have HR email you the standard everything." She looked at Thorne, who was staring at Lucas, his expression unreadable. "Sir, I'll go finalize the press release." Go, Thorne said, not taking his eyes off Lucas. Sarah left, and the glass door snicked shut. Now they were truly alone. The billionaire and the waitress who had just become his most valuable asset. The empty plates and half-filled water glasses from the failed dinner were still on the table. A graveyard of the last hour. Aurelia, Thorne said, gesturing to the room, one of the most expensive restaurants in New York. You've been working here? How long? 2 years, sir, Lucas said. 2 years, he mused. 2 years of serving men like me. Men like Julian. Men like them. He nodded to the door. And all that time you had that in your head. He tapped his own temple. You knew a cryptographic solution that my 200 and a year engineering team couldn't solve. You speak Swedish better than my 180,000 a year chief language strategist. And you let us, walk all over you. He stood up and walked to the glass, looking out over the city lights. I don't get it, Vance, he said, his back to her. Why? Why serve scallops when you could be building empires? Why were you hiding? Lucas's spine stiffened. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. The grief, the exhaustion, the humiliation of the last 2 years. It all crested. Hiding? She said, her voice low and sharp. I wasn't hiding, Mr. Thorne. I was surviving. Do you know what it's like to watch your mother die, piece by piece, while the bills pile up on your kitchen table? Do you know what it's like to take her wedding ring to a pawn shop to pay for one more round of chemo that you know won't even work? She stepped forward, her voice rising. I didn't let anyone walk over me. I endured. I applied to hundreds of jobs. But you know what a half-finished degree and a 2-year gap on your resume gets you? Nothing. You know what Waitress gets you? More waitressing. I wasn't hiding. I was trapped. The world you live in, she gestured to the skyline, doesn't look down to see people like me. Thorne turned around slowly. The cold, calculating look was gone. He was seeing her, really seeing her for the first time. Not as an asset, not as a translator. As a person. No, he said, his voice quiet. I suppose it doesn't. He walked back to the table. He picked up the folded apron Lucas had left on her tray. He held it for a moment, then tossed it into the corner. Well, you're not trapped anymore. Sarah will send you the standard HR package. It'll be a junior executive role, $150,000 a year, full benefits. You'll work with Sarah in the Innovatech team. You start Monday. He was offering her a lifeline, more money than she'd ever dreamed of. It would pay off her debts. It would change her life. Lucas looked at him. She thought of Julian, the imposter, and his $180,000 salary. She thought of her theory, the one a multi-million-dollar company had based its entire future on. She thought of the $500 million deal she had just saved. No, Lucas said. Thorne's eyebrow went up. No. I just offered you a 6-figure job. You offered me a junior executive role, Lucas said. I am not a junior executive. You fired your chief language strategist, but you don't need one of those either. She picked up the linen napkin with the 4 signatures. You need a chief technology officer for the new joint venture, someone who can lead the integration, manage the protocol, and act as the chief liaison to your new Swedish partners. She was defining her own role. And, she continued, her voice like steel, you need to hire E. Vance, the person who solved the problem your entire team couldn't. And E. Vance is not a junior executive. Thorne was watching her, a predatory smile slowly spreading across his face. He loved it. He was witnessing the birth of a shark. Go on, he said. My salary, Lucas said, is $450,000 a year, plus performance bonuses tied to the Heimdall launch. Thorne's smile didn't waver. Steep. I'm also demanding a signing bonus of $120,450. That's oddly specific, Sarah Jenkins said. She had just walked back in, holding her tablet. It's the exact amount of my mother's remaining medical debt, Lucas said, meeting her gaze. It's to be paid in full, upon signing, not to me, to the hospital. And, Thorne prompted, he knew there was more. And, Lucas said, taking a final deep breath, I want a seat on the board of the new joint venture. I'm not working for you, Mr. Thorne. I'm working with you. That was the deal, the Lindstrom sign. She held out the napkin. Sarah Jenkins looked like she was about to have a heart attack. Marcus, that's a senior VP package. She's, she's right, Thorne said. He cut Sarah off with a look. He stepped toward Lucas, his eyes blazing with a new kind of respect. You're a killer, Ms. Vance. You just hid it under an apron. He stuck out his hand. You'll have a contract on your desk in the morning. $450,000, the signing bonus, and your seat on the board. But I want you in the office at 7 a.m. on Monday, not 7:01. Lucas looked at his outstretched hand. She didn't shake it. I'll be there at 6:45, she said. And Mr. Thorne? What? My name, she said, is not Ms. Vance. It's not E. Vance. It's Lucas. You'll call me Lucas. Thorne's smile was complete. Deal. Welcome to Thorne Capital, Lucas. This time she shook his hand. It was a firm, solid grip. A deal between equals. The glass door to the atrium snicked open. Lucas walked out. She wasn't carrying a tray. Her hands were empty. Mr. Dubois, the manager, rushed over, his face a mask of anxiety and confusion. Ms. Vance, what happened? Mr. Thorne, is everything all right? You were sitting with them. Lucas looked at the man who had terrorized her for 2 years, the man who checked her fingernails for dirt, who timed her breaks to the second, who had told her to be invisible. She just looked at him. She didn't need to say anything. Where is your apron? He demanded, his voice cracking. What is going on? Dubois, Marcus Thorne's voice boomed from the atrium. He and Sarah were walking out now. Dubois snapped to attention. Mr. Thorne, sir, I hope the service was to your liking. I apologize for any disturbance from my staff. Thorne stopped in front of him. Your service was adequate, but this woman, he put a hand on Lucas's shoulder, is no longer your staff. Dubois looked at Lucas, then at Thorne. Sir, I don't understand. This is Lucas Vance, Thorne said, as if introducing her for the first time. She is the new Chief Technology Officer for my joint venture with Innovatech. She's one of the most brilliant minds in cryptography I've ever met, and she just made me $500 million. Dubois' mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. And, Thorne continued, she just accepted a salary that is roughly 10 times what you make. So, I'd suggest you get out of her way. Lucas looked at Mr. Dubois. It was a pleasure working with you, Mr. Dubois, she said. Her voice was polite, monotone, the same voice she had always used with him, but now it held a different power. She walked past him. She walked through the hushed dining room of Aurelia. The patrons, the ones who had never seen her, watched her go. She was a woman in a simple black and white uniform, but she was walking with the confidence of a queen. Maria, the friendly bartender, saw her and her jaw dropped. Lucas gave her a small private smile and a wink. She didn't go to the staff lockers. She didn't clock out. She didn't go out the steel-girdered employees-only exit into the alley. She walked straight to the heavy black marble entrance. The doorman, who was used to opening the door for senators and celebrities, rushed to open it for her. Good night, ma'am, he said, tipped off by the change in the universe. Good night, Thomas, Lucas said. She stepped out of the conditioned air of Aurelia and into the cool, loud, chaotic air of the New York City night. The taxis were honking. The city was alive. She had walked in that morning with cracked shoes and $120,000 of debt. She was walking out as a board member, a chief architect, and the woman who had just closed a $500 million deal. She left her apron, her tray, and her old life behind in the atrium, a ghost shed by a woman who had just decided to become real. Monday morning, 6:40 a.m. The lobby of Thorne Capital was not like Aurelia. Aurelia was designed for comfort, with warm woods, soft lighting, and the scent of truffle oil. The Thorne Capital lobby was designed for intimidation. It was a 3-story atrium of cold, black granite, gleaming steel and glass walls that reflected a silent, gray-blue dawn. The only sound was the funereal click of a digital stock ticker. Lucas walked in, her footsteps echoing. She wasn't wearing her black and white uniform. She was wearing her only interview outfit, a simple charcoal gray blazer and matching slacks she'd bought 2 years ago for a job fair at Columbia. It was neat, clean, and utterly invisible next to the armor of wealth that would soon fill this lobby. Her mother's old leather satchel, which held her laptop and a single notebook, was slung over her shoulder. She approached the massive circular security desk. The guard, a stern man named Frank with a perfectly pressed uniform, looked up. "Can I help you, miss?" His voice was polite but firm, designed to repel. "I'm here to see Marcus Thorne," Lucas said. "Lucas Vance." Frank's thick fingers tapped on a keyboard. He frowned. He tapped again. "I don't have an Lucas Vance on the pre-approved visitor list." Lucas's blood ran cold. The triumph of the restaurant, the signed napkin, the handshake. Had it all been a dream? Was this the real world crashing back in? "There must be a mistake. He's expecting me. At 6:45, I'm a new hire." "New hire orientation isn't until the 1st of the month," Frank said, his eyes already dismissing her, looking past her for the real employees. "You'll have to call your HR contact. I can't let you up." "You don't understand," Lucas said, the old panic rising in her throat, the feeling of being locked out. "I'm the CTO of the Heimdall project. Frank." A sharp feminine voice cut through the lobby. Sarah Jenkins, Thorne's COO, was striding across the granite, a tablet in one hand and a coffee in the other. She wore a stunning, razor-sharp navy blue suit. "Ms. Jenkins, good morning," Frank said, snapping to attention. "She's with me," Sarah said, not breaking her stride. She nodded at Lucas. "You're early." "You said 6:45, Lucas said, falling into step beside her. "Mr. Thorne said 6:45. "I get here at 6:30, Sarah replied. "Frank, Lucas Vance gets a black-level access badge. Top floor and R&D. Get it done." "Yes, ma'am," Frank said, his eyes wide as he finally, truly, looked at Lucas. He had just denied access to a black-level executive. Sarah badged them through the security gates. "Don't worry about Frank. He's just a wall. You're going to hit a lot of them today." They stepped into a private elevator, all brushed steel. Sarah pressed the button for 50. "What do you mean?" Lucas asked. "I mean," Sarah said, her voice matter-of-fact, "that I've spent the last 36 hours drafting the legal framework for a $500 million joint venture based on a theory you wrote as a college senior. The press release went out an hour ago. Every analyst at Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley thinks Marcus is insane. The R&D team thinks you're a myth, or worse, a fraud. And Mr. Thorne, he doesn't tolerate failure." The elevator doors opened, revealing a sprawling open-plan office that overlooked all of Manhattan. "Welcome to the 50th floor," Sarah said. She pointed to a large empty corner office. It was all glass. "That one's yours, for now." Lucas stepped into the office. It had a desk, a chair, and a view that looked down on the entire world. On the desk was a brand new top-of-the-line Thorne Capital laptop and a stack of files. "This is..." Lucas was speechless. "It's a box," Sarah said. "Don't get sentimental. First, HR." She handed Lucas a tablet. "This is your employment contract. It's exactly what you and Marcus discussed. $450,000 salary, the board seat, and the bonus. Sign." Lucas's hand was shaking, but not from fear. She signed her name. "Second," Sarah said, "that bonus. It's already been wired to your bank account." Lucas sat down in her new chair. It was high-backed leather. She opened her new laptop. It booted in 3 seconds. She logged into her personal bank account. The balance, which had been $84.17, now had 6 new figures in it. She didn't cheer. She didn't cry. She opened a new browser tab. She went to the New York Presbyterian billing portal. She typed in her mother's account number, a number she knew by heart, like a prayer. Amount due, $120,450. She clicked Pay in Full. She selected her account. She hit Submit. The screen refreshed. A green check mark appeared. Balance 0.0. Lucas closed her eyes. The crushing weight that had been on her shoulders for 3 years, the weight that had cracked her shoes and her spirit, it didn't just lift. It evaporated. She was free. Her mother was free. She took a single deep breath. "You okay, Vance?" Sarah asked, watching her. "Yes," Lucas said. She opened her new Thorne Capital email. She sent her first message. It wasn't to Thorne. It wasn't to the Lindstroms. To billing.org. Subject, account closed. Anya VRS. She hit send. Clack. The door to her new office opened. It was 6:45 a.m. on the dot. Marcus Thorne stood there. He wasn't in a suit. He was in a black quarter-zip pullover, ready to work. He didn't say good morning or welcome. He just looked at her desk, at her screen. "You paid the debt," he observed. "Yes, sir." "Good. Don't call me sir. You're on the board now." He jerked his thumb over his shoulder. "The main conference room, your entire R&D team is in there. So is Oscar Lindstrom on video from Stockholm. They've been in there all night trying to build your DHS wrapper, and they're failing." He stepped aside. "They're skeptical, they're exhausted, and they're pretty sure I've hired a waitress who got lucky." Lucas stood up. She picked up her new tablet, which was already syncing with the Heimdall project files. She walked toward the door, past her new boss. "Mr. Thorne," she said. "Marcus," he corrected. "Marcus," she said. "They're right about one thing. I was a waitress, and a waitress knows how to handle a room full of angry, tired people who all want something different." She walked out of her office and strode toward the main conference room, the glass doors ominous in front of her. She could see them inside, a dozen engineers, all men, all staring at a complex diagram on a massive screen. They looked up as she approached. She pushed the door open. Every conversation stopped. Every eye locked on her. She walked to the head of the table, stood next to the screen where Oscar Lindstrom's tired, hopeful face was waiting. Lucas looked at the team. She didn't flinch. "Good morning, gentlemen," she said, her voice clear, calm, and ringing with an authority she didn't know she had. "My name is Lucas Vance. I'm the one who wrote the paper. Now, someone, please get me a coffee, and let's start from the beginning." That night, Lucas Vance proved that the most valuable person in the room isn't always the one sitting at the head of the table. Sometimes it's the person everyone has trained themselves to ignore. She wasn't just a waitress. She was a leader, a genius, and a survivor, waiting for one single moment to reclaim her life. Her story is a powerful reminder that your current position is not your final destination. The skills you have, the heritage you carry, the knowledge you've built, no one can take that away from you. You are not defined by your uniform. You are defined by your courage. What did you think of Lucas's story? Have you ever felt invisible, knowing you had the answer? Let me know in the comments below. And if you love this story of an underdog finally getting their revenge, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more true life dramas. Don't miss what's coming next.